Welcome to Adulthood Loading, a wellness podcast for young adults still trying to figure it out. The content of this podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only, and is not intended to be a substitute for professional psychological, psychiatric, or medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified mental health providers for any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or mental disorder. Hey everybody, it's Emma.
I'm Marissa.
And this is our first episode of Adulthood Loading, our podcast.
So today we thought that we just get right into what we're going to be talking about and what our main focus is, which is adulthood. The mystery of it all. So Emma, tell me, what does adulthood means for you?
Well, for me, adulthood is this period that a lot of us may even look forward to. You know, when we're younger, we're like, oh, I can't wait till I'm adult. I can do what I want. I'm gonna have my own apartment. I could go when I want, where I want, with who I want, and so on. So it can bring so much excitement. Like you have this newfound autonomy and just more freedom. You know, it's also this period of like massive self-exploration. So like we're really finding out like who we are. And for the first time, sometimes without like other people influencing that or putting boundaries on us. And then we start to explore like the connections we have with others, our jobs sometimes, our career paths, our lifestyle. And I think though with all of this exploration, sometimes it can be a bit daunting. It can be confusing trying to find our bearings in this uncharted territory.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a mix of excitements, but also confusion and just fear, you know, because it's like you say, when we're younger, we had all these like grand plans and ideas and we're thinking, you know, it's freedom, it's going to be great. But there's some things that, you know, people didn't tell us about, like these bills.
Bruh.
How expensive they are, you know, taxes, the cost of insurance, like all these things that you realize like, whoa, you know, our parents, they had to spend a lot of money to be able to survive. And it's like, yes, adulthood, you have all this freedom, but it also comes with so much more.
Agreed. Like you're like, I can go to all of these places now, but nobody like emphasized like, do you have places money? Like, do you have that?
Exactly. The thing about adulthood too is you just don't know. We kind of just don't know if we're doing it right. You're in the middle of it. We're here. And it's just like, is this adulting? Is this it? Am I winning at life? Am I losing?
An adult?
Yeah, because you would like, when you look on social media, you see, you know, especially like before COVID and the pandemic, you'd see people like, they're going on trips, you know, these nice cars and all this stuff. And it's like, for me, you know, we chose the college route of life. And it's like, all I have is my dorm room.
Yeah, so it kind of seems like a lot of those things are a bit delayed sometimes for people who take the college route and the like long-term college route, you know, versus PhD, or even like, okay, bachelor's, but now I'm doing another bachelor's or doctors and all of that.
Yeah, because it's like you're in this role as a student. When you see other people who like went into the job route, they're already like, they're making money, they have their cars and everything. And then even like some people already have like children. Like when is that even gonna occur? And it's just so funny because, you know, we went from being teens and our parents being like, no kids, school work, don't worry about that right now. And now in our mid-20s, it's kind of like you just start hearing stuff about grandkids and wanting grandkids, and it's just like, wait, what? So I think that's why we decided that it would be just so important for us to talk about just this entire process of being an adult, because we get a lot of messages about what it means and what we should be doing and where we should be. But, life isn't like that. Life is very unplanned. And if we have any resources that we could share, like via this podcast, we thought it'd be a good way for us to form a little adulthood tribe.
Exactly. We want everyone to feel more supported and feel like they're not so alone in this new kind of world for us. And I think that a lot of time we may see ourselves as this, like, the other. We think we're experiencing this feeling of uncertainty, of confusion, of this thought of like, am I doing this right? Like, we think we're the only ones.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be such a liberating feeling, and like just a supportive vibe when we realize, oh my gosh, there's someone else who thinks this way. There's someone else who's feeling this. There's someone else who's been in this situation or is currently in this experience. It's so freeing.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I think the biggest thing that we like have to come to terms with is like we've had these goals and attributed these things to being adults, and it was also like just this is gonna happen in the future. This is what I want to do in the future, and it's like the future is now. So now we're adults and just trying to figure out, well, what steps do I have to take to even achieve those goals? I have no idea. It's a lot to cope with because you're dealing with all these changes, this newfound freedom, these opportunities. You're not really sure which one what you should do, what you shouldn't do. And then you're getting a lot of feedback from everyone else. And like you say, not all the time everyone is open about how challenging it is. So it does really feel like you're on your own questioning things. And so, but we're hoping that this podcast really helps to diminish some of those feelings of being alone, because you're not alone, and everyone out here kind of lost, we taking it one day at a time, figuring it out.
Yeah, and that's to highlight that, we're not really on this timeline. Like, you can move as you want to move, and like we don't have to always feel all of this pressure from outside. Like you said, like people saying like, you should do this and adults should do that. At the end of the day, you really know what's best for you,
Agreed. Because I know the big thing for me, I foolishly thought when I was younger that everything would be figured out by 25.
Yep.
It just did not work out that way. Life is so much more than just our 20s. We have our 30s, our 40s, our 50s. We're going to be adults for a long time. So we don't need to feel like we have to have everything figured out before we turn 25 or before we turn 30.
So like, I think along that same vein, so like the first myth, like being like, we have it all figured out and we know everything. I just remember like watching a bunch of movies, like even like 13 going on 30, everybody wants to be 30, flirty, and thriving, because at this point, like, you're magically at age 30 and you should just have it all figured out, just magically at this age. And the reality is, like, no one really knows what they're doing. No one
literally, no one knows.
It, like, one step at a time, or sometimes like 3 steps at a time, when you're like projecting how things could go.
Fake it till you make it.
And I think that brings me to like another myth, this idea that adults don't get scared. They're never nervous when they're making decisions. We know that's not true.
Definitely not. And I think that too has been something that I've realized. You think as you get older, like some of the insecurities and some of the anxieties and, just the things you used to worry about, like as a teenager, you think, well, I'm past puberty now. Mm-hmm. I should be coming into my own. I shouldn't feel this way anymore. But the reality is things happen on the job, at school, that brings up these same feelings and experiences from high school. And like you said, it's a myth to think that adults have everything figured out. They really don't. They're still in the process of just exploring who they are and their own identity. So it's not something that it just comes to you at 25 or 30, like you say. Right. It's a process. It's a
revelation all of a sudden. Like, I just know.
It's a lifelong thing. The messages we received about what adulthood was is very different from what it actually is, because we don't have any due date for when we're supposed to be officially adult. And so, of course, you're going to make some mistakes and figure things out along the way. I think another myth, it starts to get boring.
Oh, yeah.
So people are like, you it's like you start falling asleep earlier. You can't pull the all-nighters anymore. In bed by 10, which I admit I'm very guilty of. But it's not necessarily being boring. I think it's more so just figuring out what works for you. So of course, when we were younger, it was much easier to go out, have fun, and still bounce back the next morning. Not at this age.
That headache. You try to stay focused for 3 hours? What? And when you're tired, like 1 hour feels like 4.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah. So this idea that, you start getting bored, you have to dress plain and professional all the time. No piercings, no tattoos. Your hair have to be in a bun. Everything got to be slick. And no. You can be professional and you don't have to wear a suit. And this idea that there's, less climbing, more going to bed early, staying in. Mind you, whatever works best for you is more than okay. You still want to go to parties? Why not? If you still want to do it like periodically, why not? You have all of this power now. Like, you're having all of this self-exploration. So you really get to find out what you like, what you don't like, and cement that. And remember that it can always change. You're constantly learning yourself.
Yeah, I think that's so true, Emma, because it's just like, you just have to find out what works best for you. For me, I prefer to go out on the weekends because then I have more time to recoup and just catch myself the next day. During the week, probably not the best idea for me, but if it works for you, definitely no judgment here. You gotta live life the way that suits you, and that works best for you and in your environment.
Yeah, and you do adulthood like how you would do it.
Yeah, and don't feel like you have to follow certain rules.
So another myth is, hear me out, being an adult means you have all this freedom, like all the time. Yes, we just talked about it. You have freedom to make new decisions, but there are real consequences for all of our actions, especially now that we're adults. So we have freedom, but to a certain extent, like, you break the law, consequences.
Yeah, that's so true. I have to agree, because even in terms, I think for me, what I'm starting to come to terms with is this whole idea of just living a healthy lifestyle.
Right.
So anyone who knows me knows I love fried chicken, right? And yes, I think I've just become more cautious of how greasy certain foods are and on how unhealthy they are. And I feel like when I was a bit like younger in my teens, it was easier like to just put down just eat the food and not even think about, is this nutritious? But now I'm just very conscious of how does my diet impact my health in the long run. I think that's just come to focus for me even more now in my late 20s than in my early 20s. And it's just very much like this whole idea, like you say, of consequences. So sure, I could eat the KFC, but what are the consequences of that, like long term?
There are real consequences to our actions, and even the things we don't decide to do. So procrastinating that report for work or for school.
Or like household chores. Like, I feel like I did a complete 180 in terms of how I view chores from when I was a teen versus now. It goes back to the consequences. If I don't, meal prep, then it becomes my whole week, because then I have to find time to do it during the week when I'm supposed to be working or even having downtime, It's consequences and also like accountability.
Agreed.
Yeah, which I think is a major part of adulthood, because before we kind of had our parents to be there. And for like those of us who don't live with our parents anymore, it's like you kind of have to do it all yourself. And you just kind of have to think, almost like think ahead for everything. Yeah. I think another myth is this whole how to make friends as an adult. When by the time you're an adult, it's like if you don't have your friend group locked in, you're kind of doomed to a life of loneliness.
Yeah, it's like if you didn't keep those friends from high schools, like, what are you doing? Like, you ain't got no friends now. Like, when really we could make friends wherever we go. We want to be safe, mind you. But you can make friends at university. You can make friends at your job, at your apartment complex, your neighbors. clubs full of hobbies you like to do. And
yeah, I think it's definitely intimidating because, you know, you have this whole idea of, oh my God, am I going to come off as a creep? Or what if they think that I'm doing too much? If I like try to suggest we go out and we do something nice. I think there's a lot of anxiety around reaching out and trying to make friends as an adult because you do kind of feel like everyone is kind of locked into their groups. But I'd say you just be very surprised how much people are willing and open to making friends, you know, because it isn't something that has to be set in stone. So yes, you have your lifelong friendships, which is great, but that doesn't mean that you can't still reach out to others and, you know, just build new relationships. Because another big part of adulting is networking,
right,
you know, and just exposing yourself to different people, and all that is just going to make just a more like richer social experience.
Yeah. Networking, and I think also making your own like boundaries. So what is your friendship going to be defined by, or how do you define your friendship? Like what boundaries are you putting in place? Maybe there's a topic that you don't really feel like going into so much and you don't want to do that with your friend. And so you put that boundary up and say like, you know, if we keep talking about this, I'm not going to feel comfortable and I'm going to have to leave the conversation. Or I don't like it when you do this. So I don't like when people do this. Could you not do that around me? Is there anything that bothers you that I do that I could stop doing to make you feel more comfortable? So long as they're healthy boundaries, I would say.
Yeah. And when I thought about boundaries just now, when you mentioned it, it also made me think of how some people have different friend groups for different things.
Yeah.
So if you had like, let's say your lifelong friends, but they aren't really interested in like maybe the video games that you like to play, you could find another group who's interested. You know what I mean? You could have different groups that match your different interests. And like if you said, if there's certain things that you don't feel comfortable talking about with one friend, you'd be surprised how with another friend it might seem easier. So I think it's very good to just always have options and don't limit yourself from just expanding your social horizons.
Right. Agreed. So Marissa, let's make it more personal now. What does being an adult mean for you? When did you think, okay, I'm an adult?
I feel like I had to pay for car insurance.
Yeah, that would do.
Just like, wow, so this is what we doing now. Paying for car insurance. I think for me, it really started to set in when I had to pay like certain bills like that. So the insurance, or even look about certain things like my visa. So before that was always something that my parents would handle. And so this is actually be the first time that I actually go for a visa as an adult. So I have to go, like, you know, I can't let my parents go for me. And so it's just this whole just taking ownership of me as a person. So like, I'd say it was only this year that I'm in physical ownership of my birth certificate. Because if you're from the Caribbean, then you know.
Yep.
Your mothers are basically like the designated holders for everything like personal record documents. So the immunization cards, the passport, the birth certificates, like just anything related to that. And it's like I had some business here in Jamaica that I had to get done. And so I was like, you know, Mom, you're gonna have to send me these documents. And now I'm like in ownership of them. Like I actually have them on me, and it's like, wow, this responsibility. Like I'm an adult. Okay, we doing this. We out here.
So I keep them all in place. Can't spill no juice on this.
It's literally like, honestly, talking about it now, I'm kind of just like, where did I put that?
I'm sorry. I understand.
Like, I feel like after this, I'm definitely gonna have to go again and just make sure I have it. Like, I'm sure I have it somewhere, because what I do is sometimes I hide stuff from myself, so it'll be organized and stored somewhere. But it's like, well, where did I store it?
Yep.
So I know it's in here, but just where is it?
It's there, so we're good. It's there.
Yeah. So what about you? When did you start to feel like an adult?
I don't know. Like, I feel like this question's a little tricky for me. Like, sometimes I think I might forget, like, the moment. I think there's, like, maybe a few events. So, like, you know, especially even when you're at school or when you have your own place or whatever now, and you have to go and buy the groceries.
Oh my God.
You gotta go buy the groceries. And then like it's this whole ordeal. Like I never used to understand why like after people buying groceries, like now going to cook is this whole like tiresome event.
No thanks.
Bruh.
So I think that deadlines too, you really being held accountable with like deadlines. It's like, this is not high school or middle school or whatever. You get to 10% off. But with some things, especially like with internships, it isn't a situation of 10% off. It's just like, what are you doing? Why is it late? A client needs this. And you know the consequence of that? A bad review, or you don't pass the internship. These are all really real consequences. You can't get your parent to send a letter and be like, sorry, Emma couldn't do this, because it's like, no, show up. Yeah, so I think that, and I think a big thing would probably just be definitely the accountability. And when I say that, I mean like, I think sometimes we reflect and we're like, oh, you know, I did that person wrong. And I might not have realized it in that moment, or it's just more apparent now. So doing your part in making amends, saying, I'm sorry, that was wrong of me. And it can be scary.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in that vulnerability, it helps you to grow. It helps you to forgive yourself. And I think it helps you to move forward and not make, or try your best not to make that same mistake again. So I think that would be my biggest accountability.
Mm-hmm. So now we're going to throw it back to the listeners. You know, we want to hear from you. What does it mean to be an adult? You know, when did you start to feel like an adult? And just tell us, how has adulthood been going? So you could drop some comments and just let us know like what this journey's been like for you. And also you could probably just hit us up as well with topics or anything that you'd like us to discuss in upcoming episodes.
Definitely. Yeah, and you never know, we might read out your, I felt like I was an adult when. We want to hear from you guys. We're supporting each other, we're learning from each other. And yeah, I think that helps us all not to feel so alone in this adulthood loading journey.
So we're at the end of today's episode.
And we want to say thanks so much for listening. We see you and we appreciate you.
You can keep up with us on Instagram
at adulthood.loading
for the latest updates. See you next time.
Later.